Rudd is the former Prime Minister of Australia and the president of the Asia Society Policy Institute. He joins us live now. So, Kevin, when you look at market reaction, Dow right now down almost 700 points or so. Is that an overreaction? Do you think that's a proportionate response given the actual risk here?
Well, having been Prime Minister of Australia during the global financial crisis, I've seen some of these things before. Last week we had what I describe as irrational market exuberance. This week I think we have irrational market panic. John Maynard Keynes warned us of the animal spirits. Well, I think the animals have been out to play today and yesterday and the last few days. Some of them need to be put back in the zoo, in my view, behind a very strong enclosure. Because markets are supposed to be in the business of pricing risk and opportunity. And when I look at the objective set of risks...
This is more about uncertainty.
That's true, but...
So much is unknown here.
Yeah, and uncertainty is the key subset of risk here. What do we don't know as opposed to that which we do? But if I go through the categories of risk here, what are they? One is, what do we know about the virus, its transmission rate within China and beyond? Second is, what's the real objective impact on the number 2 economy in the world? That's China. And number 3, the economic contagion, if you like, through global supply chains, plus any indigenous problems which arise from a large outbreak within economies like Italy or economies like the United States if things were to go wrong here. All I'd say in each of those categories of risk, the data points we have so far is very mixed. These are not all disastrous data points, they are mixed data points. And hence my overall argument is that the animal spirits have just gone,
When you think about companies like Apple, companies like Nike talking about supply chain disruptions, Apple saying that they're being hit twice, not just because of supply chain disruptions, and that's significant, but also because they cater to a large Chinese market and demand within China is also, I mean, they've reopened about half of their stores, but demand within China for them is suffering as well. Do you think that this will lead to perhaps the rethinking of supply chains, the rethinking of the fact that American companies are so heavily interlinked to China? And if they do rethink that, what are some of the other countries in Asia that could benefit?
Well, they may well do that. And as you know, on the basis of the US economic tensions of the last 2 years, particularly in the trade war, and the technology war, there was already the beginnings of both discussion and action in those areas. But on this coronavirus crisis, let me go back again to these questions of measurable risk. All I would say is, to take the example you've just raised, within China itself, how's demand going to go beyond the first quarter, which will be a very bad quarter in Chinese growth? The data that I pick up from Chinese corporates, when I pick up the telephone and talk to CEOs, is very mixed across the country. In Western China, in Sichuan province, China's 100 million people out there. Chap I spoke to today, 100% back to work. Someone I spoke to in Shenzhen, 20% back to work. National average, 62% back to work. More adversely affecting the services industry, which is more people intensive. Manufacturing, less so, depending on where you are in the country. All I'm saying, this is a variegated risk and not a uniform, basically, slide into oblivion. So I think, therefore, when companies look at this and policymakers look at this, they need to actually have a slightly more calm approach to see that there are measurable downsides, there are appreciable emerging upsides in all of this, and therefore a more balanced approach is necessary.
You were Prime Minister of Australia. What do you make of the governmental response to this from various governments, Italian government, US government, Chinese government too?
Well, let me not comment on individual government responses, but let me look at it systemically. Part of the problem with risk, as seen from a market perspective, is, shall I say, the market's conclusions about the solidity and solidarity of intergovernmental government responses to what is plainly a global challenge and potentially a global crisis. So if I happen to be in office today, what would I be doing? I'd be on the phone to the President of the United States, as I was multiple times during the crisis, and to the other G20 heads of government saying, hey, guys and girls, I think it's time, given what markets are saying to us, that we convene the G20 health ministers, the G20 finance ministers and the G20 heads of government so that we present clearly in a concerted form that we are together on this as the world's biggest economies. Here's our combined health strategies for dealing with it. And by the way, if stimulus is necessary through monetary and fiscal policy intervention, here is our collective tools in the toolbox. And that, my recollection, in the March G20 summit of 2009, is what finally stabilised markets, given the mayhem of the previous 6 months or so. So So I'd say to colleagues in the political process, it's hard. You're looking but through a glass dimly. There's lots of fog of war here. But I think that helps stabilise.
A coordinated response. All right, Kevin Rudd, thank you so much. Appreciate it.